Hi, I'm Sharmen from the Marriage Recovery Center, and I would like to take a few minutes today to talk about some of the traits that we will see of narcissism in women. So, before I step into that content, I do want to give this caveat to think about. There are thousands of ways that behavior can be interpreted. Everyone around us has their own issues, their own level of hiding, their own level of maturity, and it is their right and their responsibility, their prerogative to figure out their place in this life and to grow and to mature from that. So, I don't want any of you to use this discussion today to diagnose or to diagnose the people in your life as narcissistic necessarily. More than anything else, my point is to help you untangle why you might feel lost and confused in particular relationships and maybe bring clarity to how you show up in those relationships rather than be consumed by them. So, here is some background context. Here at the Marriage Recovery Center, we do not diagnose to determine if someone is or is not a narcissist, which I know sounds counterintuitive to what you might believe. But our focus is on healing and navigating toxic, destructive behavior, all of which could be classified as narcissistic. So our point isn't to diagnose. Our point is to deal with the behavior that's being so destructive to your relationship. So the behavior is the point, and clearly its impact on the connection and attachment within your marriage or your family or with your kids, whatever the situation is. The point is, all of us come into this world messed up to some degree. We come into this world little monsters. We are egocentric, we are demanding, we are unempathetic, we are absolutely dependent. And then lifespan development requires that we mature beyond that. There comes a point where we must consider others. We must do more for ourselves. We must make room to connect and attach to people whose lives are their own to manage and navigate all the nonsense and brokenness of this messed up world with wisdom. In other words, wisdom, which is maturity and abundant life, requires one, introspection. Who am I? Who am I becoming? And then two, where are my steps taking me? So I want you to think about that as a background context as we talk about some of the narcissistic traits of women. So, when we're talking about narcissism, in actuality, the definitions, even the DSM, the definitions of narcissistic traits, all of that can apply to both men and women, but I think there are some nuances in how women acted out differently than men to some degree. So, as I run through just a few, I think I've listed about five um, different areas to look at. They really can apply to both, but again, I think the nuances of how women act out things are differently than how men do because we are wired differently. So as you listen to these traits, don't listen to them in regards to like only a woman acts out this way and a man doesn't. What I'm trying to get to is as you're thinking about the relationships in your life, that if there are women that you're interacting with and you're walking away from those interactions feeling really confused or dismissed or belittled or lost, that probably what you've been experiencing is a narcissistic trait being played out in some way. So here are some things to think about, with the hope being that on the other side of it, it might give you some better ideas of how to show up differently in those relationships. So, a big one, the first big one is that she is emotionally unavailable. You can see this in mothers who, um, particularly mothers who are very immature or stuck in an addiction of some sort, that they just don't have the emotional capacity to make room for something other than their own survival. And when addiction is part of that, part of surviving looks like getting that next fix. So all of their emotional wherewithal is totally wrapped up in their own selves, which translates to being emotionally unavailable for children, for their own kids, but also for their spouses. Um, and again, this may not mean they have an addiction, but you see it often in connection with that. They're just emotionally unavailable. And I don't mean as a reaction to pain, because most often any of us, as a reaction to pain and trauma, become emotionally unavailable because we're in an emotional shock. But I mean, generally as a whole, someone who is never showing up in a relationship able to connect emotionally with other people. So a key trait of narcissism is a lack of emotional connection with other people, a lack of empathy. You have to have the ability to make room for other people to have empathy. So they don't offer room for an emotional meeting of the minds, so to speak. No one else's feelings or um, thoughts or perceptions, or especially pain, are meaningful or worth considering. They're not worth carrying if they're not meaningful according to her perception, not meaningful to her. Like, it's not her pain, it's not her direction, it's not her plan, it's not part of her little world. Anything outside of that is um she doesn't have room for. So emotionally unavailable in that case. Another trait would be that she is demanding, jealous, isolating. um, what this looks like is that she seeks to ruin other relationships, particularly with extended family. I think one of the nuances of difference between a man and a woman in terms of narcissistic traits is that um, the demands and jealousy for a man, for men, the demands and jealousy are more geared towards their agenda. So if there's something getting in the way of the story they're trying to paint, or their job they're trying to get done, or the agenda they have for their life, then their jealousy and demands are driven by that. Whereas for a woman, more often the nuance is based on the relationship. So it's not so much the agenda of the doing, it's the agenda of the relationship. So she consumes the attention, she consumes the relationship. She wants it to all be about herself. I realize there's just a subtle agenda there, difference there, but it is just a little bit different. She seeks to ruin other relationships so that she is the center of attention. She's the one that is the one they want to be friends with, or to be in love with, or to be on stage, for example. So she's driven more by controlling the relationships, essentially consuming them for herself. She wants the relationships for herself. Nuance for men is he uses relationships to get other things for himself. So if you're in a relationship with a woman like this, what you're going to find is you're very confused, you're unsettled, not sure of your own sense of self, probably driven and tossed emotionally based on whatever mood she might be in. So these are some things that, as you see them, what I would say to consider is that potentially the problem isn't necessarily you, although there's some things you could work on in that space. The problem could be what the other person is offering to you to work within. So this is not an exhaustive list by any means. It is not particularly specific to women either, although the examples I've used do reflect what I've seen in women. This is not meant to be a means of diagnosing. I know I said that before, but I want to make sure that that point is not missed. This isn't about diagnosing. This is meant to be a catalyst for you to unpack some of the confusion you might feel in specific relationships that you're dealing with, and then begin to see how you can show up differently so that, one, you are less harmed and confused, and two, you have a a better idea of boundaries that you need that will enable you to remain steadfast in who you are and what your steps are, but also to invite the other person to show up differently as well, while giving them room to decline the invitation. And then knowing what your next steps are if they decline the invitation. We offer the opportunity to help you unpack, untangle, sort out, and refocus the life you're trying to live. So you can call our client care team or check out our website at marriagerecoverycenter.com and see how we can get you the information you need just to take some different steps, a different direction. So thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time. I hope this has been encouraging, and I hope to see you soon.